Chapter 9. Dorinda maneuvered her Toyota briskly, if not always safely, through the regular Market Street traffic. Roderick sat beside her, with her enormous shoulder bag wedged in between them. He was dressed in jeans, a crisp plaid shirt, and a pair of leather boots, all with traces of Charlie's scent clinging to them. Dorinda kept stealing glances at him, part of the reason for her less than stellar driving. All he needed was a bandana and a Stetson and maybe a little stubble. Dorinda hid her smile, except for the generated by ABC Amber.
Elle était convertie.
http://www.processtext.com/upclit html http://www.processtext.com/upclit html. Mustachioed Charlie, Wers rarely went in for facial hair, being hairy enough. In their other form. Gone native already, I see. These are Charlie's clothes. I've already wrecked enough of my own. Had I known what was waiting for me, I'd have shipped over my wardrobe. They probably would have lost that too. She snuck another glance his way. He glared out the windshield with narrow-eyed intensity and kept a white-knuckled grip on the door handle. You slept outside my room last night, she said. I most certainly did not.
Smon.
I heard your nails scrabbling on the floor when I got up this morning. And the floor right by the door was warm like a big furry rug had been lying there. A cab cut her off and she blasted her horn. Roderick's death grip on the handle tightened. Your room is safer than the hall. I warded it for a reason. Why aren't you wearing the amulet I gave you? I gave it to Aunt Letty. She needs it more than I do. His voice was one step up from a growl. You were frightened last night. Upset. You tried to hide it. But I can tell. His teeth flashed briefly. It wasn't a smile. I didn't say anything because I knew you'd react this way. I'm guarding you, not the other way around. If I want to take precautions, you're supposed to follow them. Your pack, he barked, for the duration at least. Pack looks out for each other. It's what we're famous for. His bitter tone alarmed her. She shot another glance at him. He turned his face away from her to glare at the stream of humanity clogging the sidewalks. Or perhaps to hide his expression. She didn't think. She sensed a swell of pain and reached for him. Automatically, her hand touched his shoulder. Truth surged into her like a tidal wave. He trusted her. Her. The human. The American. The woman. The witch. This proud wolf had put his life into her hands because he had no choice. He was isolated. In a strange country overrun with apes, and somebody wanted to kill him. His own family in all likelihood. His pack. Without a pack, a wolf had nothing. Was nothing. All he had was her. And he had chosen trust. She wasn't certain how to feel about that. Roderick, she started. He yelped in alarm. Dorinda looked out the windshield just in time to hit the brakes and avert what would have been a nasty rear-ender with a dodge. She yanked her hand off his shoulder and clamped it back on the wheel. Roderick glared at her. She could swear his ears had flattened against his skull. Do please watch the road. Sage advice. She swallowed hard and concentrated on getting them to South Street in one piece. The knife told them little. It's had a slicer put on it, Perry announced. After 10 minutes careful examination. A fence spell, she explained to Roderick. Cuts through magical defenses. That's how he got through the air. Spell. I don't recognize any signature. You. Dorinda shook her head. Stormin Norman snuggled in her arms, flicking his tongue contentedly. Afraid not. I'll be honest, I was hoping for dark arts. That way we could have narrowed the search. Dark arts. Roderick stood behind the counter, as far from the window and Springsteen as set a spell's confines would allow. He and the cat threw occasional snarls at each other across the room. You mean like an evil wizard or something? Along those lines, yes. Death spells are dark arts related, and most of the dark practitioners hang out in Germantown. They leave specific signatures on their work too, like a scent. Unfortunately, an offense spell's pretty generic. All it does is disrupt other magic. Any murder or mayhem that results is only a side effect. Any witch, light or dark, could have spelled this dagger. It's not going to lead us anywhere. Well, we know one thing. Perry drew a few harmless runes in the air with the tip of the blade. Their trails sparkled briefly before they winked out. Whoever commissioned this has money. Silver daggers don't just grow on Trees. I never understood the whole silver thing, Roderick said. We're not like the bats. Knives and bullets kill us regardless of the metal involved. But you're tougher to kill than a human, Perry pointed out. Silver holds magic like nobody's business. Better than iron or steel. You want to kill a werewolf and make sure he's dead, you use silver and bless it or spell it. Sort A like added insurance.
No.
Offense or anything, but it looks like somebody with a heavy wallet really wants you dead. Thank you, I'd already reached that conclusion. What's wrong with the bloody cat now? Springsteen had leaped to his feet. His tail bottled and he hissed out the window. Abruptly he dove off the sill and streaked for the back. Seconds later, Charlie entered the shop. He sniffed the air suspiciously. Is there a cat in here? Not anymore, Perry said. 2 of you guys are too much for him. Charlie went on sniffing. Are those my clothes? He asked Roderick. I've a yen for plaid today. Your mum's filled you in. Just the basics. So you've got coyotes after you? And you've been in Philadelphia how long? It could be gang-related, Dorinda said. Wolf pack versus coyote pack. We're inclined to think it's personal. Neat trick, Charlie said. Considering the local coyotes wouldn't know Rod.
From din tin tin.
One of them knows me now, Roderick said darkly. A scroungy little mongrel. Named Alfie. Ring any bells? Not off the bat. Better give me your statements. Don't leave anything out. Dorinda and Roderick did so in detail, correcting and enhancing each other's testimony. Perry moved to stand as close to the good-looking Charlie as a wolf's sense of personal space would allow. Springsteen's sour-tempered yowls from the back condemned them all. How about the humans? Dorinda asked when they'd finished. Did you get anything out of them? Are you kidding? No one saw anything, no one knew anything. Without anyone to press charges, we had to let them go. You probably got more than we did. He half grinned at Roderick. Had plenty of witnesses to the naked hunk. Though not one of them could describe your face. So I'm off the hook for that? Roderick said dryly. I suppose that's something. Not much. Charlie looked to Dorinda. You're sure the humans were taking orders from the were? It looked that way to me. And you think they're watching the house? They found me twice, Roderick said. Not to mention Dorinda nearly ran. One down in the street. Surveillance does suggest itself. Mom's alone up there. Except for you two now. Charlie growled, his good humor vanishing. I don't know all Eugene's friends. Maybe he knows coyotes. He's an open-minded guy. I can't picture Lucy or Emma dating one. If anyone's ever mentioned this Alfie to me, I don't remember it. I'll run him through the system, see if he's got a record. This too. He took an evidence bag from his pocket and deposited the knife into it, careful to touch only the handle and not the silver blade. Maybe I can find out who crafted it, but don't hold your breath. So what's the big deal with coyotes? Perry said. They're still wolves, right? Just smaller. They're skulky, smelly, backstabbing little curs, according to all mothers' reports, Roderick said. Thank Lycaon we don't have any in England. They're also smart, adaptable, don't mind cities and play well with humans. Charlie added. Better than we do, sad to say. Coyotes have been known to hire humans to do their dirty work. But magic? That's new. That's scary. Dorinda absently stroked Norman's head spines. You don't think this is a turf? Va. That's the easy answer. I'd have bought into it if they hadn't gone after Rod. He has no ties to Philadelphia. I don't like the implications. Yeah, Perry said. 3,000 werewolves in Center City alone and they go after the new guy. Way to wreck tourism. You think this has anything to do with the wedding? Charlie asked Roderick. Roderick's expression was neutral. Dorinda says no. The Duquesnes have no objection to the match. Bite it. I guess that would have been too simple. Well, I'll do some nosing around. I can keep this clean of human police, but if a coyote war's brewing, Big Alex has to be told. He started for the door. Dorinda got in his way. Charlie hadn't been stricken from the list of suspects yet, and he was about to walk out with the dagger, their only physical clue. She used returning Norman to his tank as cover. Before you go, she said, Roderick wants to try dinner with you and your siblings again. Can you make it tonight? She rested her hand on his forearm. Charlie seemed surprised by the contact but didn't flinch or snap, as she'd Hoped he was more human tolerant than most were. I think that's a great idea. In fact, I'll set it up someplace classy. No more Fong bars. Dorinda removed her hand before he could shake it off. He nodded to them all and left. Perry sighed. Tell me he's single. Springsteen yelled at such blasphemy. All right, Springsteen, I'm calm.
Engineer.
Yeesh, what a pain in the butt. Excuse me, you two. Got a smooth fur. Perry stomped into the back. A barrage of hisses ensued. Charlie's clean, Dorinda said. He's a good, honest cop determined to keep the city and we're reputations clean. He's concerned for your safety and especially worried about his mom. If he wants anybody dead, it's whoever's threatening his family. One down. His mouth stretched in a thin, nasty grin. You know, I almost hope it's Eugene. He's just enough of a git to actually think he can pull this off. If this wasn't so serious, I think you were enjoying it. The detective stuff, I mean. All wolves enjoy a good hunt, bringing down the prey and sinking our fangs into captured flesh. It's what we live for. That explained the nasty. And when we catch our, prey, I'll deal with it, whether it's family or not. Especially if it's family. His eyes made it clear exactly how. There's no need for you to involve yourself in that aspect of it. Thanks. I guess you know how witches feel about doing deliberate harm. And you know how we feel when our lives and packs are threatened. He wasn't grinning anymore. I'm asking you to lead me to my kill. Can you live with that? Wolf, she thought. They might look like big, shaggy dogs, but they weren't. They might look like a handsome, sexy man, but they weren't. She didn't remember that every second she was liable to get her throat ripped out. If I don't, you may die, and I've sworn to protect you. She couldn't quite meet his eyes. I'll help you eliminate suspects. Let's see where that takes us. Fair enough. He drew in a long breath and let it slide out. It ended on a violent sneeze. If we're done here, do you mind if we leave? I've got quite enough cat up my nostrils. Perry stuck her head in from the back. I heard that. I was talking to the cat. Dorinda leaned over Norman's tank to give her dragon a final pat. I'll try to get back in a day or so. Looks like I'm having dinner with a pack of wolves tonight. Group date. Perry stuck out her pouty lower lip. You get everything. Dorinda suggested both of them stick close to Meadowlands for the afternoon. No sense in courting further trouble. Roderick didn't care for that. He wanted to try to pick up the trail of the were-coyote and hunt the bugger down. If you go, I'll have to go with you, Dorinda said. And where does that leave Aunt Letty? I can't be in two places at once. Anyway, a coyote risking a war with wolves will know how to cover his trail. I don't think you're going to find him. Roderick grumbled but acquiesced, while he called Philadelphia Airport and verbally ripped them to shreds over his still missing luggage. Dorinda decided to run a background check. Aunt Letty, I'm having trouble keeping everyone straight. Do you have a family album or something? Aunt Letty had several, as it turned out, and was as thrilled to share them as any mother would be. She brewed tea for Dorinda and beef broth for herself, and the two women settled on the sofa with a thick photo album spread across their laps and 3 more albums stacked on the coffee table. Roderick stuck his head in briefly, wrinkled his nose and withdrew. Shortly afterwards, Dorinda heard the clack of the doggy door. Dorinda started to get up. He shouldn't be out there alone. I know he'll try to track the coyotes. There's nothing to track. I've already checked. They smothered their scent in. Must let him alone, dear. He won't go beyond the yard. He's frightfully frustrated just now, poor puppy. Crowd him and he's liable to snap at you. Now, where would you like to begin? They began at the start of the album. Keeping the players straight, Dorinda quickly realized was going to be a chore and a half. Whereas leaned toward huge extended families. The Meadows clan was an offshoot of the Chase, which had line centuries long stretching back through European history. The Duquesnes were distant relatives, and the 3 packs mingled on a regular basis. One photo showed over 50 individuals gathered on the sprawling lawn of some massive country estate, and that was just the human-looking faces.
No telling.
How many of those big canine beasts roving in and out of frame were family members? Have you got any pictures a bit more, well, intimate? Dorinda asked. More like immediate family. Certainly, dear. Aunt Letty flipped pages, chuckling. Come from a small pack, do you? I'm afraid so. It's just me and my brother, and he's in Chicago. Witches aren't social by nature. The older woman sked. That's just terrible. How do you survive without family around? I've got Perry and a lot of good friends. Well, customers and acquaintances. It hadn't really hit until just now how non-social she'd been. When was the last time she'd gone on a date? No wonder she'd reacted so strongly to Roderick. Look at it this way. There's no line for the bathroom in the morning. For us either. It's why we like big yards. I miss having puppies around, but I don't miss the housebreaking. Here we go. This was a photo Dorinda could deal with. A much younger Letty, a smiling, long-faced man and 5 children. The eldest, a gawky boy with Charlie's features, held up a mangled squirrel and grinned from ear to ear. Charles's first kill, Aunt Letty said proudly. He didn't even eat it. He slept with it for a week until it got too pungent. Pups. They grow so fast. Yeah. Okay, that's Charlie, so this must be Eugene. The little one's Emma. I'm sorry, I can't remember the other two. This is Lucy. Aunt Letty pointed to the dark-haired, rather cool-eyed girl, standing close to her father. The other one's Lorraine. Litters yet. Want to hold a puppy in my lap again. She turned the page to another large group shot. Roderick's face leaped out at Dorinda's eyes. He was about 10 years younger here, early 20s, surly. Cold yellow eyes peered out on a world full of prey she considered all hers. Was coming to believe, couldn't hold a fong to the alpha females. That Roderick's mother. Sister. She's a bit of a bitch. You're in charge of a pack as large as the Chases. She leaned close to. Elsewhere she didn't kill her mate. That's him right here. She indicated the chasing cars. That's Tamra, Roddy's older sister. Just like her mother, more's the pity. Each other aside even as the camera snapped. Moved first, placed herself at the forefront with her mate safely submissive. One other thing she noted. Both Roderick and Tamra had their mother's eyes. Have been for decades. They started with real estate but lately Daddy's branched them into other areas. If there's one thing a wolf knows how to. Dorinda nodded and bid Aunt Letty continue. The grass with 3 puppies was Roderick's younger sister, Diane. At the end, the previous night on Cold Duquesne, Orange Chase, the family Omega. He'd a bit more scrutiny turned up the Meadows clan, or at least Letty's mate and packs together. Give us strength. Why, I'm right in front of you. Right here. Aunt Letty pointed to a silver. You're very lovely as a wolf. Her hand started to tremble. Dorinda caught the album before it could slip off her lap and returned it, open, to the coffee table. When her tentative, it isn't all right. Not always. Not for us. I was very lucky. When my George challenged me. But then Charles always was an odd sort. A police officer. Alphas never. I'm so afraid, dear. Afraid for Roddy. He's such an innocent. Another country. Maybe that was good enough for her. Was it good enough for beginning? That would be nice. Aunt Letty wiped her eyes. Even if they are half French. And licked her cheek. The look he speared at Dorinda bordered on a threat. Don't growl at her, Roddy. She hasn't done a thing beyond listen to an old. For Lycaon's sake. Lunch. Something I can rip apart. I'm in a ripping mood. I'll see what I can scrounge up. The sofa and Roderick. Dorinda sat with her hand shielding both her eyes and her reddened cheeks. I wish you'd stop doing that. I'm not looking. Says. Get bent. Game. Not while you're engaged to someone else, I can't. Are all witches lacking in humor? Or did I just get lucky? He put his hand. Werewolf. You're an arrogant bastard. Granted. Which is why I need you at my side. I'd hoped you could accustom yourself to either. I know you're doing it deliberately. Screw my scent. She shot to her feet and glared into his eyes. I'm not some. Could summon her air spell. They both heard the click of Aunt Letty hanging up. When Letty returned to the parlor, he had put 3 feet between them and that was Charles, Roddy, Aunt Letty announced. He set up a little party. Chapter 10. Dorinda took special care with her preparations for the evening. She used the strong soap she'd picked up at Set a Spell this morning and a careful application of perfume. She wanted the wolves unable to read her without coming across as insulting. Because this was a casual dinner, she opted for slacks and a sweater, both just a bit on the baggy side. She didn't want Roderick getting any more of his ideas. Honestly, what was he thinking? that he could fit in one last quickie before his upcoming wedding with her. It won't work, she confidently told her. Reflection as she brushed and arranged her hair. He's a wolf and I'm a witch. Witches don't need men to make them feel like they're somebody. We walk alone. And we like it. She frowned. Was that just a hint of doubt in her reflected eyes? No, she decided couldn't be. Roderick did more than flirt with her. He flirted with being an oathbreaker. And she wouldn't be a party to that. I can't, she muttered. It goes against everything witches believe in. I can't. She flung the brush down on the dresser and turned away from the mirror just as a firm knock sounded on her door and Roderick's voice sounded from the hall. Charlie will be here directly. Are you decent? Are you? The door swung open. Roderick stepped in like he owned the place. Even in borrowed slacks, shirt and sport coat he looked good enough to make a woman's mouth water. Dorinda's heart did a backflip she couldn't prevent. I'm dressed, he said. Best I can do. He shut the door. Can you get what we need? Maybe. She found it easier to watch him in the mirror than to look at him directly. If any one of them is thinking, I want that sucker dead, then yes, we're good. Otherwise it could be tricky. You had no trouble with the Duquesnes. That was an aura scan. That only gives me surface impressions. For anything deeper or more detailed I need to touch the subject. The Duquesnes were pretty open in their feelings, but one of them still could be hiding something. Albert's the only one I'm absolutely certain about. How long do you need to touch them? That depends on how much info you want. The longer the touch, the more I get. These are words and we don't know each other any longer than a couple of seconds and they're going to get bitey. Will that be enough? She bit off a sigh. There was just no arguing with a wolf with his paws dug in. I'll try a scan first, then go for a touch. We don't want them to know the real reason I'm with you, and I don't want to lose any fingers. I'll do the best I can, but don't get your hopes up. In the second it took her to turn around, he crossed the room. His hands closed on her shoulders. She shuddered at the sheer power of him and the blast of utter faith in her that came with it. This is my family, he all but hissed. I need to know beyond all doubt. Do what you have to. You won't come to harm. I won't allow it. He released her and she swayed. The bed and the dresser invited her to sit or lean respectively and gather her shaken senses. She summoned her will and stayed on her feet. Witches might walk alone, but no one ever said it was easy. Concerned, Roderick reached for her again. She shied away. Don't, she said. In a breathy voice not at all like her. Didn't I just tell you what touching others does to me? It was a lame excuse, but he bought it. He reluctantly withdrew his hand. Sex must be hell for your kind, he said bluntly. How do you make little witches? We manage. There, she had herself under control again, or just about. Good enough to fling a warning shot. Afterwards we bite the male's head off. Like spiders. No you don't. But he looked doubtful. Dorinda only grinned. Roddy, Aunt Letty called from downstairs. Charles is here. Thank Lycaon, Roderick muttered. He started to offer Dorinda his arm, obviously thought better of it, and simply left the room, expecting her to follow. Dorinda hefted her shoulder bag and trailed him down the stairs. Charlie drove a white Crown Victoria, which Dorinda strongly suspected was a former police cruiser. He didn't seem at all surprised to see her with Roderick on what should be a family outing. Perhaps he'd deduced why Roderick had really hired her. So, he said, and radiated nothing untoward. He greeted her politely and opened the rear door for her. She thanked him and got in. Roderick eschewed the front passenger seat and climbed in beside Dorinda, which earned him raised eyebrows. From Charlie. Again. He said nothing. He went to the house briefly to speak with his mother and give her a lick on the cheek before he got in behind the wheel. Police escort, Roderick said as they maneuvered down the drive. Should I feel honored or insulted? I'd be on guard if I were you. I talked to Big Alex's betas. Nobody knows zip about any coyote uprising. As far as Alfie goes, he's never turned up on anyone's radar, either Big Alex's or the department's. Not even a citation for jaywalking. Has your family had trouble with coyotes before? Dorinda asked. Never. I've never even arrested one. They're too slick, too good at keeping their heads down. Why they're after you, Rod, I have no idea. Is there something you're not telling me? Perhaps they fear another British invasion. Where are we going? He took the change of subject easily enough. The rib shack. Swore run. Not many humans, no vampires. Eugene kicked up a fuss, but bite him. You should be safe enough. More meat. Dorinda sank back on the seat. At this rate she'd waste away to a stick before they found Roderick's enemy. Charlie's littermates met them on the sidewalk just outside the restaurant. The whole bunch exchanged greetings, lots of rough slaps and hugs. Dorinda was accorded cool nods from the girls and a big-toothed leer from Eugene. Then they went inside in order. Charlie entered first, with Roderick at his side, followed by Eugene, Lucy and Emma. Dorinda, the outsider, was left to bring up the rear. Just inside the door, however, Roderick captured her arm. Hang rank, he murmured. You're with me. None of the others said anything. Properly submissive, at least on the outside, Dorinda played along. Eugene briefly showed teeth at the table when Roderick insisted Dorinda be seated beside him. A snarl from him and a whirf from Charlie silenced all argument. The pack seated themselves again in rank order, with Charlie and Roderick first and the others circled around them. Dorinda found herself beside the youngest, low-ranked Emma. Or maybe it wasn't just about rank, the teen had heaped a strong cologne on top of a strong deodorant. A slap in the nose to her family? Who was she trying to insult, Dorinda wondered. Or what was it she wanted to hide? A waiter brought menus. Praise Hecate, they served a selection of salads. Dorinda ordered a garden salad and water, and earned more cold, arch looks and wrinkled noses. Go ahead and sneer, she thought. If one of you is a killer, I'm going to bring you down. The wolves chatted among themselves, tacitly ignoring Dorinda, which left her free to observe and scan. For an alpha, Charlie was remarkably easygoing, not at all threatened by Roderick's presence. But then, Roderick showed no interest in his territory or pack, so Charlie could afford to be affable. She'd already dropped him as a suspect and so concentrated on the others. Lucy gave off a warm, rosy glow at odds with her cool exterior. She'd nabbed the seat beside Charlie, putting her one up on Eugene.
Eugène sera stuttered.
An annoying yellow-orange. An excitable boy or a nervous one. Chafing at the leash, perhaps? Maybe Cousin Roderick represented one alpha more than Eugene could tolerate. She'd have to contrive some excuse to touch him. She might have to touch Emma too. The youngest Meadows's aura pulsed yellow with fear, and her movements were edgy and quick. Could she be hiding something? A plot against the pack, perhaps? Hard to believe from a 16-year-old girl. No, a 16-year-old she-wolf, Dorinda corrected herself. Probably wasn't any fun for her living at the bottom of the heap, any more than it must be for Orange Chase and Cole Duquesne. Predatory ambitions and adolescent hormones made for a volatile combination as well as a potentially deadly one. Dorinda reached toward her with a friendly smile, but the girl shied back, her lip rising. Dorinda withdrew. So much for that. Try again later with more subtlety. The food arrived, plates heaped high with steaming cuts of meat. Grazing, are we? Eugene said, with a sneer for Dorinda's salad. I thought only cows. Roderick snarled, and Eugene snapped his jaw shut. Suddenly Eugene found his meal fascinating, as did all the Meadows clan save Alpha Charlie. Charlie winked at her, wished her an amiable bon appetit, and dug in. The thought hit her then like a thunderbolt. For all their smiles and jokes and laughs, the Meadows family accepted her, let her sit at the table and eat with them only because Roderick said so. Even Charlie. She was his pack, his property. Her magic and her thoughts were incidental. If he removed his protection, she'd be dead within seconds. As a witch, Dorinda was accustomed to looking out for herself. To go so abruptly from self-reliant to utterly powerless, totally dependent on a wolf's good graces didn't sit well with her at all. Her scent must have shifted because the whole pack stared at her. Emma edged her chair away. Roderick, however, inched closer until their legs touched, marking his turf. Is anything wrong with the food? He said. The food's fine, she said, her thigh rigid against his. She'd drawn the pack's attention, never a good thing with predators. Distract them, she added heartily. Let's eat. That worked. The Meadowses dug in and forgot her again. Not Roderick. He watched her more than his plate. I'm okay, she beamed at him. Nothing yet. Let them fill up, relax a little. Put them off their guard. He nodded fractionally. Good plan. Plans are only good if they work, Dorinda thought. She let the meal proceed to dessert before she set hers in motion. She opted to start with Charlie, the most human-tolerant. If you don't mind my asking, why'd you become a cop? Is that a normal career choice for worse? Hey, you know us. We love to hunt. Charlie smiled, showing off strong white teeth. Chasing deer in the park didn't cut it for me. Chasing criminals does. As long as you've got a badge to back it up. Do you fellow officers know? My captain knows, and some of the others. He shrugged. They know there are parts of the city where a human's not welcome and I can move freely. The department's smart enough to want to stay on Big Alex's good side. I had a couple brushes with some jerks on the force when I started, but what rookie hasn't? Dorinda nodded. Don't ask, don't tell? He laughed at that. Pretty much. So what about you? Eugene leaned forward. Why'd you become a witch? Looking for a thrill or what? You don't become a witch, she explained patiently. You're born one. Like, worse. Yeah? I always thought. No, you've never thought, Roderick cut in. That's your problem. Eugene bristled, and the auras at the table darkened to red. Eugene glared at Roderick. Roderick glared back. Eugene flinched and glanced away. The rest of the pack relaxed again. Guess it could be worse. He muttered. You could be a vampire. Nothing's worse than being a bat. Other than a monkey, that is. Dorinda leaned toward him, as he had with her. Not even a coyote, she said. Coyotes. Eugene snorted. Stinky little prairie dogs. I'd rather date a human. At least the monkeys know what hygiene is. Hey Rod, I heard one of them jumped you. What was that about? Your guess is as good as mine, Roderick said easily. I gave him some scars to show off to his friends. I doubt they'll be so bold again. They better not be. Bad enough they're spreading all over the park. I hope Mom's okay where she is. You could make sure of that, Charlie said pointedly. Try stopping by more often than once a month. Eugene jabbed his fork at the remains of his steak. He didn't look Charlie in the eye. Eugene, Dorinda concluded, was not very bright. And speaking of bright, the conversation turned elsewhere, but Dorinda hadn't missed how Emma's aura had flared up in a panic during the previous debate. Continued to shiver nervously, although her face betrayed nothing. The tense fingers gripping her fork, however, told a different story. So, dating a human was bad, but dating a coyote was worse. Not to mention all those harsh, conflicting smells she'd ladled on. An attempt to hide another musky scent? Abruptly Emma set down her fork. May I be excused? She asked Charlie. He nodded, and she rose and headed for the restrooms. A second later, so did Lucy. So did Dorinda. This might be her chance. An inadvertent bump as they exited stalls could tell her volumes. She wanted Emma especially. Something had set the teen on edge. Running with the wrong breed, perhaps. I didn't know monkeys pissed in packs too, she heard Eugene comment behind her. Then a yelp. Someone had cuffed him. Either Roderick or Charlie. Well, the jerk had it coming. She followed the she-wolves into the restroom. Emma ducked into a stall before Dorinda could catch her. Okay, go for Lucy. Then she pretended to stumble. Lucy was too quick. She swerved away from contact and slammed the stall door in Dorinda's face without even bothering to growl. So much for that plan. Lucy finished first. Dorinda heard her at the sink, then the clack of her heels on the tiles as she took up position near Emma's stall. Are you going to be in there all night? If I have to, Emma shot back. The nerves in her voice sounded clearly in Dorinda's ears. No telling what her sister heard. Go back to the table. I'll be out when I'm done. Lucy huffed, mumbled something harsh-sounding inward, and stomped out of the restroom. Emma didn't emerge until Dorinda had finished washing her hands. The girl crept shyly up to the sink beside her. She watched Dorinda in the mirror but averted her eyes from live contact. When Dorinda turned toward her, the wolf girl sidled away. Is everything okay? Dorinda said. Don't be nervous. I don't bite. Emma hesitated as if struggling with something, or screwing up her courage. Finally she blurted, You're a witch. That's almost like being human, right? Somewhat, Dorinda said dryly. Don't let it get around. But you're human sort, eh? Emma persisted. And you're okay with worse, Mom. And Charlie and Cousin Rod like you. So it does work. It can work. Dorinda nodded warily, wondering where the girl was going with this. Then it hit her. The overwhelming odors, her anxiety when interspecies interaction, came up. She touched Emma's forearm and had her suspicions confirmed. You're dating a human, she said. Emma made a whimpery noise and nodded. Suddenly Dorinda found her arms full of wailing teenage she-wolf. She waited for the tide to ebb before saying, Want to tell me about him? His name's Mario. I met him at school. His dad's a butcher down at the Italian market. Mario helps out. She smiled suddenly and the sun broke through the clouds. He smells heavenly. Does he know you're a were? Yeah. He thinks it's neat, having a girlfriend who can shift. But his family doesn't know and neither does mine. And I'm scared to say anything. She wiped at her eyes. Eugene's all humans are monkeys and stupid, and if he knew about Mario he'd rip my tail off. She sniffled. Eugene's a douche. Yeah, I noticed. So, can you put a spell on him? So he won't hate humans anymore. Magic doesn't work that way. I wish it did. The world would be a nicer place. What about your sister? Isn't she on your side? Or Charlie? He gets along all right with humans. I'll bet he'd back you up. Doesn't Eugene do what Charlie tells him? Yeah, but they're, guys. All chests out and tails in the air. They tell us she's what to do all the time. Is that how it is with humans? Do the males always boss you around? They try, Dorinda said, thinking of Roderick. In that regard humans and wers weren't so far apart. Fortunately they can be trained. If I were you, I'd fess up to your sister and win her support. I get the feeling if the two of you ganged up on Eugene, he'd back off in a hurry. In the meantime, if you can get down to South Street, I can give you some herbal soaps and shampoos specially designed for wers. They'll hide his scent on you without driving everyone nuts. Really? You are so cool. Emma threw her arms around Dorinda's neck just as Lucy poked her head in the door to see what the holdup was. Emma, what did I tell you about biting Rod's guest? I wasn't biting her. Emma loosened her chokehold but didn't let go. She faced Lucy with her head up and her eyes level. Lucy, I have to tell you something. It's about that boy I'm seeing. You mean the human? Emma gawked. Lucy smiled. I wondered when you'd finally come clean. I was getting tired of covering for you. So you're okay with it?
No.
But I've been revising my views of humans lately with Charlie on the force and Rod's recent problems and all. The look she sent Dorinda held a flag of truce. At least this one brings you meat. Just tone it down with a deodorant, okay? You're really getting hard on the nose. The women returned from the powder room to a table minus a male. Charlie had to leave, Roderick said. Police business. Eugene's offered to drive us home. If you do something for me. Eugene produced a deck of cards. Rod says you can tell our futures with these. Dorinda thinned her lips. Would this twit's challenges never end? More like suggest possibilities. The future can't be predicted because it isn't set.
No?
Rod says you told his future. How's it turning out? Spot in one aspect. Roderick's cool yellow gaze swept over her in a manner that left her both nervous and tingly. I'm still waiting for the other two kick in. Tell mine, Emma pleaded. I want to know about, school and stuff. Reluctantly, Dorinda took the pack Eugene thrust at her. She returned to her seat beside Roderick, freed the cards and shuffled. I don't control this, so don't be upset if the reading is negative. And keep in mind everything is open to interpretation. Emma selected her card, the 7 of Hearts. Only good news. Dorinda began the deal. Her tension eased as all hearts and diamonds appeared. The teen beamed and bounced on her chair. Had she had her wolf tail, it would have wagged like mad. Lucy declined a reading. Had mine, Roderick said. Dorinda smiled evilly and, no thanks. I don't believe in that stuff. I'm not scared. I just think it's bunk is all. Can you do a general one for? It works better for an individual, but she decided to be generous and let Roderick, she saw with no surprise, selected the King of Spades. Lucy picked. Silently, Dorinda drew a card. Queen of Hearts. She made a neat little pile on the table, careful to arrange the cards so the king and queen remained. She dealt the first card. Ace of Spades. Spades. I don't want to alarm anybody, but you should all stay on guard for the next Them to the pack. It could just be a run of bad luck, but no point in taking. Me? What did I do? I know. Now tell me what they really said. She knew better than to lie to him. Death. Or a near miss. Soon. On Lucy's back for a second as they'd left the restroom. Neither are involved. With coyotes or the attempts on your life. Dorinda. You got the girls upset. Lucy and Emma are walking home, said they. Roderick surged forward, but Dorinda beat him to it. She seized Eugene's wrist. Away. His blistering glare fixed on her chin. All bark and no bite, that was. Scratching for weeks. Alfie. Roderick pressed. A coyote named Alfie. Know him. Accountant, he can go find someone else. Ought to leave you here, Eugene groused. You and your crazy ape. But he obeyed. As a whistle. Your cousins are off the hook. Wolf of you yet. Meadowlands in petulant silence. Roderick said every little. With both the Meadows and Duquesne's clans now. His brother, or his mother, had apparently ordered his death. The seat. His hand came to rest on her arm. He moved it almost immediately. She didn't pull away. Don't worry about it. Eugene pulled up by the side of the house, next to Dorinda's car. Single. The hell she would. They'd left Aunt Letty alone with coyotes on the loose. The threat implied by her prophecy rolled over her like an avalanche. Picked up the tension in the kitchen. But no blood. No death. Not here. Not. Growling. Charlie. That call from the police. Ignoring him, Dorinda said. What's going? Chapter 11. Roderick insisted on going. He was bound to the Duquesne pack, which made them family. Regardless of how he felt about them, they were now his responsibility. He also insisted Dorinda accompany him. While Eugene comforted his distraught mother, Dorinda checked through her massive shoulder bag and its meager collection of generic spells and hoped something in it could help. You realize, she said carefully on the drive to Lupin Hill, we could be interfering in a police investigation. Hang the police. This is family. Charlie will expect me to come. Why else do you think he called? Almost as soon as they entered the house, Dorinda realized he was right. Charlie was the only officer present, and he welcomed Roderick with a quick, grim nod. Thank Lycaon you're here. The family's frantic. Roderick got right to the point. How's Albert? Alive, Charlie said, but in bad shape. The doctor's already here. He noticed Dorinda behind Roderick. You know any healing spells? It's not my forte, but I'll do what I can. Will they let me near him? They bloody well better, Roderick snarled. Take us to him. The pack had brought Albert to the den. He lay on the floor atop a buffalo rug. A wiry form, human in shape but not aura, crouched beside him. Ellis hovered at the croucher's shoulder, alternately growling and whining. Nora stood nearby, a twin clutched in each arm. Coraline wailed and howled. Cole stood white-faced in a corner, apart from the rest of the pack. The doctor glanced up when they entered. Fangs flashed at Dorinda from within. A dark-skinned face. To her surprise, she knew him. Dr. Clark was a vampire. And one of her regular customers.
Yo lo vel.
Fancy meeting you here. Join the party. I'm not a healer. Any port in a storm. Get over here. He's bleeding all over the place. She started forward automatically, but Ellis lunged into her path. His flash of fangs was nowhere near as friendly. Roderick brutally shouldered him aside. She's with me. She can help. She's human. Ellis's voice had devolved so far down to a growl Dorinda could barely understand him. It was a human that shot him. Not this human. Ellis didn't hear him. Too far gone. The situation might have escalated into full-blown alpha challenge, except Nora leaped in between Roderick and her mate. Then Coraline flung herself into Roderick's arms and started to sob loudly against his chest. Maybe you'd better wait in the other room, Charlie, murmured to Dorinda. She glanced at Clark. He grimaced unhappily. The tension in the room was thick. Enough to choke a griffin, not at all what Albert needed just now. She let Charlie escort her from the den. In the dining room, out of sight and scent of the hair-trigger wolves, she asked Charlie, how did it happen? 2 shots to the chest. Right in the backyard. Charlie paced restlessly. Along the length of the dinner table. A neighbor heard gunshots and called 911. Luckily the dispatcher knows this is our territory. That's how I got the call. Good thing too. Ellis is going scatty. He'd have ripped a human cop to pieces. He stopped pacing and faced her. You probably shouldn't be here. Tell that to Roderick. I want to help. I wish you could, but walking in there with your ape smell won't do any good. Right now. He cocked his head at her. How good are you at forensics? Worse than I am at healing. You want me to try to trace the bullets? It'd be a help. Charlie growled softly. I'm betting they're silver. Like the knife from Kelly Drive. Ellis said a human shot him. Are you sure? The smell's all over the yard. Human odor's hard to fake. Now normally I'd write this up as your basic species crime, but you and Rod brought in the coyote angle. Coyotes don't follow wolf protocol, and they don't mind working with humans. They want territory, but they won't put themselves in danger. They'll find a way that keeps them clean. How does shooting Albert help? He's beta. It's the beta's job to protect the alpha. Maybe Ellis was the target and Albert got hit by mistake. This still doesn't explain why they've attacked Roderick. He doesn't own territory here in America. He doesn't even have a pack. He'll get both when he mates with Coraline. You want to destroy a pack, you decimate the top ranks. The coyotes wouldn't want a strong new alpha to come in and mess up their plans. But how do they know he's here to marry Coraline? According to every wolf I've talked to, nobody knows any coyotes. Charlie scratched the back of his neck. You got me there. I didn't want to admit it, but it's looking more and more like an inside job. I will admit it, Dorinda said. We had the Duquesnes pegged at first, but now. She broke off. Even silver bullets wouldn't cause bleeding, a vampire couldn't. Stop. But if they had a specific spell on them. She rushed from the dining room back to the den. Someone, probably Nora, had gotten Ellis seated on the couch. He leaped up. When Dorinda dashed in, a snarl on his lips, she barely spared him a glance. She dropped down beside Albert, opposite Clark. Albert's pallid complexion and gaspy breaths frightened her. Have you found the bullets? Not yet. They're in pretty deep. I can't get him stabilized. He said more, but she barely heard him. She could taste the magic on her tongue, fluid and slippery. The silver bullets had indeed been spelled just like the knife. Roderick, she said. There's a vial in my bag labeled cleanser. I need it. He darted at once to fetch her bag. The second he left Ellis's side, the Duquesne Alpha launched himself at Dorinda. She slammed him back onto the couch with a gesture and closed her fist. Thickened air pinned him in place. Don't interrupt. I think I know what's wrong and I think I can save him. Ellis strained against the air. Take your stinking paws off him, you damned dirty ape. Dorinda snapped her hand. Ellis's jaw clacked shut and stayed shut. Wordlessly, Roderick handed over her bag and joined Charlie and Nora by the couch. Coraline grabbed his arm and hugged herself to his side. Camilla and Bentley had gone wolf and shivered together at their mother's feet. So Lowell, what we got? Clark said. A flow spell laid on the bullets. It's meant to keep water running, but it works on any liquid. That's why he won't stop bleeding. She sprinkled the cleanser liberally over Albert's wounds and chanted the generated by ABC.
Amber-LIT.RT.
http://www.processtext.com/upclit.html. http://www.processtext.com/upclit.html. Strongest spellbreaker she knew. He'd lost so much blood already, no telling. She was in time. Abruptly the cords of magic snapped. The fresh, lively scent of the cleanser swept out the filthy reek of death. A greasy gray cloud misted out of the bullet holes, hovered a moment over Albert's chest, then melted away. Dorinda sat back, suddenly weak in the limbs. All right, Clark said. Now we're cooking. He poured a gummy liquid from his own bag into Albert's wounds. The bleeding stopped almost at once. Albert's skin remained waxen, but his breathing evened out. Dorinda was impressed. Coagulant. Old family recipe. Clark grinned. Managing blood is a vampire specialty.
No.
Way I'm digging into him here. He's coming back to my office. Will he make it? Roderick said. Too soon to tell. Who wants to help me load him up? The entire family moved as one, including Ellis once Dorinda released him. He didn't look at her. Neither did any of the others. They lifted Albert, bloody, rug and all, and carried him outside. Charlie went ahead to open doors. Clark's ambulance sat at the side of the house, near Charlie's Crown Vic. Dorinda hadn't even noticed the two vehicles when she'd pulled up. She helped Clark open the back and set up the gurney. You finally got an ambulance. Was wondering. Had to. You put a siren on a hearse and people look at you funny. You did. Good Lowell. Want a job? Already got one. She hopped down and stayed well out of the way while the Duquesnes bundled Albert into the ambulance. Ellis climbed in with him. Clark took off with siren blaring and lights stabbing red at the trees. I'm going to need statements from everyone, Charlie said to Nora. You up to it? Whimpering, she nodded. She herded the Stillwolf twins inside. Cole had taken Coraline's arm and guided her unsteady steps back to the house. Charlie brought up the rear. To her surprise, Dorinda found Roderick beside her. I thought you went inside, she said. Not yet. I'll have to stay just for a bit. They need the comfort of an Alpha's presence. It's best you stay clear. They're sensitive just now. I understand. She started for the car, but he touched her arm. Before she could guess what he had in mind, he bent his head and kissed her. The kiss took her completely by surprise. She hadn't expected his mouth to be so gentle or so warm on hers. Wolves had a reputation for sudden, ravenous attacks. This held unguessed at caring. A request generated by ABC Amber Lit. http://www.processtext.com/upclit html http://www.processtext.com/upclit html. Instead of a demand, before she knew what was happening, she had submitted, surrendering to instinct. She leaned into his embrace and opened her lips to his tender assault, reveling in the flood of heady sensation the contact between them brought. When he finally released her, she couldn't let him go. She didn't trust her legs to hold her up. He arched a brow, amused. Did I do it wrong? Nah. Dorinda cleared her throat. No, that was just right. She waited for her galloping pulse to slow to a trot. What was that about? For standing by us. For helping Albert. They'll never thank you. They don't appreciate help from a human. Ido. I wanted you to know. Que heart, Dorinda thought, slow down or there's going to be serious trouble. Where in Hecate's name did a werewolf learn how to kiss like a human? And to get so damn good at it too. You're welcome. He draped his arm around her waist. This time the possessiveness didn't rankle so much. Come inside. I want you near. She didn't resist his guiding her back to the house. I'm glad to see you've overcome your aversion to touching, he said. That snapped her out of it. Bite me. Later, perhaps. He brought her to the dining room and left her with a wolf's kiss, a brief flick of his tongue against her cheek. I won't be long, I promise. I just need to see they're settled. Take your time, she mumbled to the empty room. With him gone, she could think more clearly, breathe more easily again. This was bad. This was disastrous. Casual attraction was one thing. You looked, you lusted, you smiled and moved on. Serious attraction, where your urges waved torches and pitchforks and stormed the castle of good common sense, was another monster entirely. He was a wolf. A carnivore, a predator. Arrogant, overbearing, possessive and bigoted. Also thoughtful, protective, gentle, generous and considerate. He was a creature of power, emotion and instinct, just like a witch. A kiss is just a kiss, she told herself. It didn't have to mean anything. Couldn't mean anything. He was getting married in less than a week for Goddesses Sake. The King of Spades married to the Queen of Hearts. If only she could get that pesky reading out of her mind. She caught herself pacing around the dining room table and stopped. In the silence, she gradually became aware of a vaguely familiar tapping sound. Eager for distraction, she followed it. The sound guided her to a small room toward the back of the house. By the time she arrived in the doorway, she placed it, fingers tapping on a keyboard. The door stood ajar. She glanced inside. The room had the look of a large pantry, converted into small guest quarters. It had just enough space for a cot, a bureau, and the desk where Cole Duquesne sat with a laptop. He read the message on the screen and typed in a reply. Then he paused and sniffed the air. Dorinda rapped on the door. It's just me. I know. He signed off and shut the laptop before he turned around. Does Officer Meadows want me? Not yet, I don't think. I heard you on the computer. Oh, yeah. Chat room, he explained. I had to talk to somebody. The Shizar. I'll just, Belatedly, he motioned to her.
Smoin.
This is fine. Small as it was, this was still Cole's space and she didn't want to intrude. As an Omega he had little enough of his own, as these skimpy quarters attested. I didn't realize Wers had chat rooms. Or used computers for that matter. Silly. Why wouldn't you? It's more common than it used to be, Cole said. Uncle Ellis won't touch it. Too old school. He just growls at it. The twins are more with it. Camilla's on Facebook. Bentley likes the games. He looked at the floor. She noted his room. Had no window. How's Uncle Albert? No word yet. I'm sure he'll be all right. You can help out, You could go to your family. Cole snorted. And do what? Well, it seems to me you're currently the household's ranking male. Unless you think Bentley can handle it. Hey, you're right. He jumped up and dashed past her, head up and spine straightened from its habitual Omega slouch. Dorinda chuckled. She was just full of good deeds tonight. Alone again, she wandered back to the dining room and from there to the foyer. She found the foyer chairs more comfortable. So comfortable, in fact, she hadn't even realized she'd fallen asleep in one until Roderick's gentle shake on her shoulder awakened her. She responded groggily. What time is it? Late, he murmured. Ellis is back, and he's in full paranoid alpha mode. We both need to get our tails out of here. Charlie's already gone. Albert. The doctor thinks he'll make it, but he'll be a long time in recovery. There's nothing more we can do. No one came to show them out. They left quietly. On the way back to Meadowlands, Dorinda related her conversation with Charlie. It isn't just you, she said. It's all of you. All the higher ranks. The hunt's on. His eyes lit with a vicious rage. She thanked the goddess. Wasn't meant for her. Enough of this. It's time we took steps. Leave. Aunt Letty said, aghast. Absolutely yes. They're targeting high rankers and I won't put you in. Or until they settle you, Eugene said. Forgive my bluntness, but are you scatty? You'll be alone up here in Coyote territory. You might as well stick it. He won't be alone, Dorinda said. I'll be here. Won't let a pack of coyotes drive me out of my home. Besides, I promised your mother's not here. You're leaving with Eugene, and that's the end of it. I'm calling Charles. Need. Off to the side while Eugene helped his mother put together an overnight bag. I'll be back tomorrow for whatever else she needs, he said. He reeked of relief. Charlie will swing by here as often as he can. Low, so Aunt Letty wouldn't catch it. The rest of you ought to be safe. Enough. I hope. Eugene stuffed his hands into his pockets. I wouldn't be you for anything. Thank you for the vote of confidence. Car. Dorinda cast her senses as far as she could, and kept a wary eye on the much undergrowth for comfort, but no yellow gleam of were eyes. Roderick, you call me every day, Aunt Letty said to him, even as Eugene helped her out for him. And do look after yourself. Dorinda could only nod mutely. They watched the car until its taillights were lost behind a curve in the Nobody's around, Dorinda said. Not within my range. I think the fun's over. Roderick slammed into the house and stalked about the parlor. Dorinda shut in. Eugene's right, she said. All you've done is make yourself You hired me to protect you. All right then, you're fired. She shook her head. I can't walk away while someone's plotting deliberate harm. Anyway, I promised Aunt Letty I'd watch out for you. And a witch's oath is sacrosanct. His mouth twitched, the start of a smile. About that sorry human nose of yours. Excellent ones, as I've observed. Perhaps this is best. You're still convinced someone close to me is behind this. The cards have never lied to me. I'd nearly convinced myself Mother was behind this. But she has no reason to kill Albert Duquesne. Or Ellis Duquesne for that matter. Maybe we should keep tabs on your family. If they're not behind this, they. With internet access at home? Do you know how to use one? Of course. I don't much care for it though. The screen hurts my eyes. Dorinda considered. She'd been all over Meadowlands her first day here as part of her security duties. Duquesne would put it. I'll bet Emma's got internet. She can email your death lately. Or if she has connections here in Philadelphia. She grew self-consciously aware of his intense stare, and the light that had a predator. What? I did right to choose you. No beta could serve better or show such courage and compassion. Those are traits you find only in alphas. Lycan. I never. Dorinda sniffed to hide how touched she was.
I'm overwhelmed.
Of a car. She had to smile at that. So what's our next move? He continued. Realization brought the whole night thudding down around her. She was suddenly very, very tired. Bed sounds like a good idea to me. Oops. Wrong phrasing, as his eager growl attested. I meant sleep, she. I couldn't possibly sleep right now. That's no problem. I know a couple techniques. So do I. I know. His eyes still held a feral gleam, but his stance had gone to a. Now, and you're an attractive female. You can't expect me not to notice. He grinned wickedly. Or you either. Damn his sensitive nose. He could probably sniff out every step on her slide. We're both tired, she said, and pumped with adrenaline. You're right. Bad. Will the circumstances ever be good? Not as long as you're engaged. I can't break an oath and I won't help. Another break theirs. She's in this monkey town and I get the one with scruples. Look on the bright side. When this is over you'll have a mate. That should. Unless she's the one trying to kill me. The clingy blonde drooling all over you? Somehow I doubt it. You wish. Dorinda rubbed her eyes with the heels of her hands. I need sleep. We both need sleep. Morning. She brushed past him and locked herself in the bathroom. Too tired to shower. She slathered on the toothpaste and attacked her teeth with a vengeance. Jealous Faye. Who did he think he was? What did he think she was? Probably used to having women of all sorts of species falling all over him. Well, just over onto her back and let the wolf have his way with her. Meant maintaining control, or else the magics could run amok. Roderick threatened her control. If she followed his lead and gave in to her instincts. Then there was Coraline, Roderick's betrothed, tangling herself up in a werewolf mating. Good goddess. Disaster didn't even start to cover that. Don't touch. That way she could keep him safe and herself in the bargain. She solved this puzzle quickly. She could get back to serving the things that. She reached her room unscathed. Bless the goddess, she'd had the foresight to. Nude, but not in these circumstances. Not with a hungry wolf prowling around. Outside her door. The knob was already turning. She bowed to the inevitable and flung the door open. Yes. Goddess damn him. All he had on was a towel, draped precariously about the battering ram. He didn't wait for whatever response she might have. Managed. He lunged straight to the point. I think you should sleep in my room. Tonight, he said. This. Not for that. For mutual security. My room is protected. Yours isn't. That. I don't think we'll be attacked tonight. Yet here we are. He assessed her expression and sniffed. I assure you. He blurred. The towel pulled on the hardwood floor around the black wolf's paws. He looked up at her with an arch expression on his muzzle and wagged his. Change back after I fall asleep. The floor was miraculously clear of dropped clothing, the bed smartly made and neatly turned down. Respect. He thinned his yellow eyes at her. We keep our dens tidy, he said. Several things, but she didn't list them. He hopped onto the bed. Warily she. Her. His fur gave before the round solidity of her hip. She touched his pelt. She couldn't help herself. Beneath its thickness she yawned mightily. That's nice. Just so you know, she said. I'm not normally a dog person. Dorinda chuckled. Oh, he was a dog, all right. Somehow she couldn't work up any real anger toward him. She settled comfortably under the covers while he. That so was she. Chapter 12. Only one short shaft of dream penetrated Dorinda's sound sleep. In it she hovered over the bed at ceiling height and watched Roderick watching her sleep. He still lay tight against her back, but had resumed his human form. His hand caressed her gently, but only where the blanket covered her. He pressed his nose into her hair and inhaled deeply, as if he meant to memorize her scent. The tip of his tongue escaped through his parted lips and brushed against her cheek. With a breathy sigh, the sleeping Dorinda smiled and rolled over toward him. Her slumbering self accepted the warmth of his palm cupping her face, and the more human-style kiss he bestowed on her lips. She watched his body tighten and heat flare up in his eyes. The prey lay helpless, his for the taking. Hunger warred with propriety while she lay pliant and unresisting in his arms. At last he leaned back with a little irritated growl. The fire in his eyes had banked into a hot glow of longing. He shook his head, shoved himself off the bed and stalked out of the room. He had an erection the size of a Clydesdale's. Dorinda jolted awake, her heart thudding. What the hell? She turned at once to Roderick's side of the bed. The spot where he'd lain was still warm and still wolf-sized. No impression of human arms or legs or human anything else marred the covers. Clearly nothing untoward had happened, just as he had promised. Tell that to her pulse rate or the tingle between her legs. Crap, she greeted the day, and bolted out of the bed like it contained snakes. Sex dreams about a werewolf? She'd hit a new personal low. She took a leisurely shower, and spent more time than normal choosing her garb for the day. Even she recognized these as delaying tactics. She had no intention of facing Roderick until she felt ready, even though he had done nothing and would do nothing. And neither would she, so there. By the time she emerged cautiously from her bedroom, a delicious odor had crept upstairs. It went right up her nose and down into her stomach and reminded her dinner had only been a salad, and that nearly 12 hours ago. Who was cooking? Had Aunt Letty returned against orders? Curious, she patted downstairs. To her surprise, she found Roderick busy at the stove. About time, he greeted her. The sun's been up for ages. There's no coffee, but Aunt Letty keeps a generous assortment of teas. Are you all right with eggs? Tea's perfect. I can do eggs, but fruit's better. Let me see what she's got. No, you sit. He motioned to the kitchen table and the chair already pulled out for her. A basket of warm muffins sat beside her plate, along with a fruit bowl laden with grapes and strawberries and a single ripe banana that jutted toward her like a banana. She corrected herself with mental alacrity. He spotted her look and frowned. The banana's not meant as an insult. I found it atop the fridge. I'm not offended. She took her seat. I am surprised. I didn't know you could cook or that you'd even bother. And where would we be right now if that were the case? All the higher ranks are expected to be able to provide for the pack, feed the pups and all that. Can drive a car too. I haven't insisted on it because I don't know my way around. Or did you assume I let others ferry me about while I hang my head out the window? I assumed low ranks handled the day-to-day chores. Yes, normally that's the case. But since one slip-up can make you a low rank, it pays to be prepared. He demonstrated his preparedness by expertly cracking eggs into a frying pan. Dorinda didn't look at the eggs or the pan. Instead, she studied the jeans he wore. They fit deliciously snug on him, fore and aft. She couldn't help remembering the dream, assuming of course she'd been dreaming. He paused before the stove. Is there any particular reason why you're staring at my trousers? Who, me? I'm not staring. To distract them both, she reached blindly for the fruit bowl. Her hand closed around the banana. Of course, too late to back out. Now, she ripped off the peel and crammed a huge bite into her mouth. Again too late, she realized what that must look like. Fortunately, Roderick had turned back to his eggs. His butt muscles twitched as if wagging an invisible tail. She forced herself to chew her bite of banana into mush before she swallowed. What I meant was, she said carefully, are those still Charlie's clothes? My only option for the moment. Until the airline recovers my luggage or I can get to a clothing store, this is all I've got. Luckily Charlie and I are close in size, not to mention equal in rank. She couldn't picture Roderick lowering himself to put on Eugene's hand-me-downs. You look good in jeans, she blurted. Oh, crap again. Thank you. If you promise not to take offense, let me say you look stunning. This morning. Stunning, right? In a simple blouse, tan slacks she hadn't had time to press, tennis shoes, and with her hair still damp from the shower, she could pass for Miss America. You'd say that if I had a sack on. Yes, because it would be true. You just want me in your bed again. For starters. What man wouldn't? You'd be surprised, she said. Human men top the list. The reality of a witch and a witch's power was more than most could take. Good thing witches were solitary by nature, or she wouldn't be able to stand it as well as she had. The tea kettle screamed for attention, deflecting the path of their conversation. Just in the nick of time, Roderick found cold cereal in one of the cupboards and brought a bowl, corn flakes and milk to the table, while she poured herself a helping and adorned it with strawberries. He loaded his plate with eggs and a hunk of Canadian bacon. She couldn't help wrinkling her nose, and he couldn't help lifting his lip. I'm going to eat this whether you approve or not. Go ahead. I won't stop you. Part of do no harm includes not forcing my views onto others. She stirred her cornflakes and heaved a sigh. I still miss sausage pizza. Roderick brought their tea to the table, then seated himself. If it makes you feel any better, I could never stomach liver. Mother used to make the most wretched blood pies. It's just as well the lower ranks handle the kitchen chores. He forked eggs and bacon into his mouth and chewed thoroughly.
No.
Wolfing his meal for this were. Or perhaps he was merely being polite in her presence. He washed it down with a sip of tea. Your turn again. For what? Tell me something about yourself. Here we are facing mortal peril together. And I know next to nothing about you. I'm a witch. That about sums it up. Oh come, I know there's more. Your name, for instance. Dorinda. Rather unusual. That was Dad's little joke. He named me after a character on an old TV sitcom. Another clueless mortal male who married into a coven of witches. My twin brother Paul was supposed to get it, but Mom insisted on naming him after her favorite uncle. I guess we ought to be grateful the Harry Potter books weren't big then. They probably would have named us Ron and Hermione. Trash, Roderick pronounced. Almost as bad as those horrid romances. They show such a skewed view of us, and they always get everything wrong. Not everything. Vampires really do. So you're a fan. Perry, she said hurriedly. Perry reads them. I may have glanced at a couple. He lifted a brow. She set down her spoon. Oh, all right. I admit it. I like
fairy tales.
I like the happy endings. Witches don't get many of those. It's comforting to know they're out there for somebody. She cupped her chin in her hands and smiled at him. So how about you? Or don't werewolves read? The trashy books don't say. Of course we can read. He looked uncomfortable and cut off a big chunk of bacon to forestall his reply. Don't let on to Aunt Letty, but I was always rather taken with that French author. The one who wrote all those American westerns. French.
Louis L'Amour.
Her laughter overrode his growl. Once she explained, even he saw the humor of. No wonder he was so fascinated with your Wild West. But if he's going to write those things, he needs an appropriate name. Zane Grey and Max Brand are Western writer names.
Grosse Missrepräsentation.
That's what that is. He stabbed his fork into his eggs with a vengeance. We can't just sit here and wait for them to attack. We need to take action. I'd love to. Tell me what. They've got numbers and the advantage of knowing who we are and where to find us. I can't even pin down a motive. She stirred her cornflakes disconsolately. I suck as a bodyguard. You most certainly do not. You probably saved Albert's life. Thanks. There is that. But if we intend to carry the fight to, then we're going to need. The wall phone went off like an alarm. Roderick and Dorinda exchanged a look. Then Roderick got up to answer it. Yes. Pause. Yes, this is he. Really. A long stretch of silence followed. Roderick listened with interest, and Dorinda watched him with interest. Absolutely, Roderick said. We'll be ready. He hung up and turned to her. Well, perhaps there's some hope after all. Don't make any plans for this evening. We've been summoned to an audience with the king. Dorinda drove Roderick into Center City for a tour of Philadelphia's most exclusive clothing stores. One did not go before the King Wolf of Philadelphia. In a cousin's cast-offs. However, she balked when Roderick insisted on purchasing a gown for her to match his new suit. You're my pack, he pointed out. Your appearance reflects on my reputation. Do you want him to think I can't take care of my followers? She stared at the price tag in dismay. This would cover my rent for 6 months. Relax. I'll charge it to my business account. Mother will pick up the tab. I'm sure she wouldn't want her son to look bad in front of the king. He smiled when he said it, or showed teeth at least. Dorinda let the green and silver silk creation flow between her hands and imagined how it would look and feel on her body. Maybe the Chase clan did owe her something for services rendered after all. At precisely 6:30 a black sedan pulled up to Meadowlands. 2 muscular wolves in roomy sport coats came to the door and escorted them to the car. Neither spoke beyond as few polite sirs and ma'ams as necessary. Their sharp stares took in everything: the house, the road, the layout. The driver never went over the speed limit, even on the Schuylkill Expressway. Did we just drop into a gangster movie? Roderick whispered in her ear. Big Alex has his way of doing things. I just hope he doesn't pull out his Sopranos DVDs. We could be there all night. The driver pulled up before a restaurant on Lombard Street. Italian Dorinda saw with no surprise. The driver stayed with the car while the other henchwolf ushered them inside and into the king's presence. Big Alex Vittori came by his nickname honestly. He stood 6'4" and boasted a gut roughly the size of a blimp. His hair, red as marinara, stood out on his scalp in blunt-cut bristles. Knowing his age, Dorinda suspected he dyed it. He greeted them heartily. Dorinda Lowell, the witch of South Street. Mama, you look good enough to eat. Hey, just funine. We don't do that no more. You must be the Brit. Roderick Chase, Roderick said stiffly. He stepped forward, placing himself between her and the other were. They did not shake hands. They stood apart and sniffed each other's air without making a show of it. Once each decided the other wasn't worth a challenge, their postures relaxed fractionally. Come on in, the king wolf invited. Take a load off. He made shooing motions. At the word behind them, the wolf went to stand by the door. They followed Big Alex to a large table that afforded them a full view of the
interior.
For a restaurant at the dinner hour, the place seemed awfully empty. To Dorinda, the few occupied tables hosted males with a handful of hard-eyed she's. She scanned and confirmed her suspicions. The customers were all in clothing loose enough to be shed in a blink, all strategically placed. She recalled Aunt Letty's comment of how alphas rarely reached old age. True, unless you had the money and power to surround yourself with a pack of finely honed killers. This being a war meeting, food came before business. Big Alex had spaghetti with meat sauce topped with meatballs the size of tennis balls. Roderick enjoyed the same. Dorinda went with fettuccine alfredo. This is excellent, she said to Big Alex. It better be. I own the place. Now, word is you got coyote trouble. Roderick related the tale of his so far disastrous stay in America. Big Alex listened attentively and pushed for details. All of Philadelphia was his territory. Anything bad that happened to a wolf on his turf reflected badly on him. Sounds more like it's apes making runs at you, he pointed out. Working for coyotes. The ones who attacked me took their orders from Alfie. I'm told coyotes are more at ease around humans than we are. Than most of us, you mean? Big Alex winked at Dorinda. Which bodyguard? Smart move. That ought to shake him up. Not necessarily, Dorinda said, and told him about the charm knife and the spelt silver bullets. Big Alex's expression darkened. Clearly he hadn't been given all the specifics of Albert Duquesne's shooting. The spells were generic, she concluded, so I can't track the witch working with them, but they didn't waste any time turning to magic too. So they upped the stakes, did they? Okay, this has gotta stop. Used to be. Everybody knew where they stood. We stayed clear of the apes and the bats, and they kept off our turf. Then one morning you wake up and Wissahickons gone to the prairie dogs, having apes take shots at us. Now magic too? That's it. Stinkin' mutts need to learn their place. He impaled a meatball on his fork and ripped a bite out of it for emphasis. Time I took a real hard look at the park. You pups relax. I think we can have the vermin cleared out. Toot sweet. We appreciate the help, Roderick said. Hey, least I can do for the pup of an old friend. So how's your mom these days? Still the queen bitch. Roderick nearly dropped his fork. You know mother? Like yeah, I know your mom. She was a regular back in the day. Her and her sister. How else you think Letitia met George? It ain't like now you got email and that. They'd spend weeks over here building ties with us American packs. Strength in numbers and all. Ain't that why you're here? To mate with a Duquesne. That was the general plan. Yeah, I seen the girl. Not a bad looker in either form. He leered knowingly at Roderick. You lucky mutt. If I was 30 years younger, I'd sniff her myself. Is she in the registry? I didn't see her name. The registry? Big Alex's forehead furrowed. We ain't bothered with the registry in a dog's age. You still think it matters? Yeah, guess you would. You Brits are so hot on Brupe Brading. Speaking of hot, don't take this the wrong way, puppy, but your mama was a looker too. I even figured once, well, I didn't figure long. That one was alpha right out the womb. Scared even me. I'd mated with her. She'd be running the city right now and I'd be sleeping in the school kill. You know what I'm saying? And there wouldn't be no coyotes in Fairmount Park.
No.
Offense. None taken, Roderick said. That's mother spot on. Watch you don't take after her, or I might have to kill you. He didn't sound like he was joking. You watch your step with this one Lowell. He's got even half his mama in him. You could end up in serious scat. She managed a smile. I'll be careful. Yeah, you two watch your backs. I can clear out the trash, but it'll take time to sweep up. Letitia safe. She's in the city with her pups. Attaboy. I got a couple of betas headed to your place even as we speak. That ought to keep the riffraff out. Just the same, don't go taking no chances. Them coyotes, they're wily little bastards. That's awfully generous of you. Yeah, well, we're the city of brotherly love. We got a rep to maintain. With the completion of the meal, the audience came to an end. Big Alex saw them to the door where their escorts waited. Nice meeting you, Big Alex said. No one spoke on the ride back to Meadowlands. As the sedan pulled up to the house, two canine-shaped shadows moved in the darkness, one in the side yard, one across the street. One of the wolves got out of the car and gestured. The shadows receded. The wolf saw them to the door, nodded silently and left them. I need a Tums, Dorinda announced as soon as they got inside. She rubbed her stomach. Her wistful hopes of weight loss vanished. I had no idea so many werewolf rituals revolved around food. Old habits die hard, Roderick said. Lycaon's tail, did you see him? How does he shift? How does he keep that belly from dragging on the pavement? I've never seen Big Alex in his wolf form. Now that you mention it, I don't think I want to either. Regardless of his appearance, he struck me as a wolf of his word. Think the worst may be over. A lie. He was too subdued, distracted, and Dorinda feared she knew why. Would hang between them like an open wound until somebody voiced it. Felt to her, of course. She was the bodyguard. Your mother, she said. She used to come to Philadelphia. She was a regular visitor. Yes. She might have made contacts. Long-term contacts. She would, he said. It would be like her. Abruptly he strode to the door. I'd better have a word with our watchdogs. We don't want them jumping Charlie. Or Eugene by mistake. Better tell them about the wards on your room, she said, but he'd already slammed the door behind him. Dorinda stood and stared at the door, slumped inside her beautiful expensive silk gown. She wanted to reassure him, cheer him, offer him comfort, but what could she say? Werewolf politics were ruthless, rooted in a bloody past. Kill or be killed, rule or submit, that was the way of the pack. Witches had a certain flair for cold-heartedness, but Wers had them beat by a mile. She found it all hard to comprehend, raised as she'd been by a family that couldn't care less if she were half witch or half mortal, but cherished her for who she was. That Roderick had reached adulthood in his pack spoke of a strength and determination far beyond any she could lay claim to, as well as a damage that tore at her heart. At that moment she would gladly have throttled Bernadette Chase and do no harm be damned. She waited. A half hour passed and he didn't come in. She gave up and trudged up the stairs. There had to be something she could do for him to ease his tension in his mind, other than the obvious, of course. She double-checked the wards on his room and found them undisturbed. As far as she could tell, Big Alex's watchwolves hadn't entered the house. In her own room she reluctantly slipped out of the dress and hung it in the closet with infinite care. When would she wear it again? No matter, she'd come up with something. When you owned a dress like this, you found excuses to wear it. She should put it on and go into the shop, just to watch Perry's jaw drop. As she tugged on a robe, a prickle of premonition tightened the hairs on her forearms. She turned from the closet and went to the window just in time to catch a glimpse of movement near the flower beds. Not Roderick. Its coat was too light. One of the betas? She leaned across the sill for a closer look. Clearly canine, the yellow beast prowled at the edge of the garden watching the house. Her room, it seemed, in particular. Dorinda's breath caught in her throat, and she pressed herself against the wall. Coyote? Had they gotten past Big Alex's guard already? After the initial moment of alarm wore off, she peered outside again and relaxed. That was clearly a wolf down there. Too big and heavy for a coyote. Its movements were decidedly wolfish. The golden coat was an anomaly among the predominantly grey wers, but not unheard of. Having reassured herself, she leaned against the sill and waved to the guard. Below, the wolf cast her what appeared to Dorinda's eyes as a filthy look, before it slunk off through the lilacs. Dorinda sniffed. Not every wolf would be as sanguine toward her presence as Big Alex. As long as they kept the coyotes away, she could tolerate a little ill will. The front door opened, thumped shut. She heard Roderick's tread on the stairs. He paused for a moment outside her door, then moved on. He shut himself in his room. She listened to his fitful movements, more sound than a man simply undressing would make as he paced out his frustration inside his cage again. Suddenly she knew how she could help him without betraying his betrothal to Coraline. She knew just the way to lift his mood and her own as well and clear up both their heads. Why hadn't she thought of this sooner? She dug out her cell and called set a spell. After a brief rummage through the storeroom, Perry assured her the item she needed did indeed exist. I don't know how the goths missed these, Perry said. I'll set the magic on him tomorrow morning so it'll be nice and fresh. You need anything else? Condoms? Birth control? Flea and tick powder? No, hold on to that last one and you've got a one-track mind. How many times do I have to say this? It's not that kind of relationship. Even if I did sleep in his bed last night. You what? Dorinda had to yank the phone away from her ear. She wondered that the wolves in the yard didn't start howling. Details. I want details. All in good time. I'll see you tomorrow. How's Norman? Depressed. He melted his water bottle. Poor baby. Maybe I should bring him here. Her door flew open. Roderick, still in his slacks but bare-chested, stared about the room. I heard a shriek. Dorinda held up her phone. Perry. She says hi. Oh wait, no she doesn't. She says Perry. That's disgusting. Pixie laughter trilled out of the cell, followed by a click. Dorinda set the phone on her nightstand. We should set her up with Eugene. That'll fix her. Or Eugene. Never mind. I've got something to fix us.
À surprise.
You're going to love it. Really? He said doubtfully. Yes, really. Enough with the stress and the politicking. Sometimes you just had to get away.